Hi, this is Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. On this channel, I review fountain pens and I talk about how they can be used as tools to write with and draw with. I also talk about artists like Van Gogh and Rembrandt and Marie Sendak, since I'm the curator of the Sendak Foundation. And I talk about my own drawing. I use fountain pens to draw with, and because I'm a painter and an artist, and in general, I am a advocate for fountain pens. I want to say though that if you're not an artist but you use fountain pens for writing and calligraphy, I think there's a lot of information here for you as well. You don't have to be just an artist to enjoy. I'm really interested in the design of fountain pens and the history of modern design in the 20th century. So that's kind of an ongoing theme here, and just the whole pen addiction. And so I'm fascinated by the whole pen community. As always, if you like the content here, please subscribe. That's the way to support the channel. I'm going to talk today about a pen that is quite popular. It's from China. It's the Jinhao 100. It's been around for quite a while, but it's new to me. And right now, I think it's on sale on Amazon as a Black Friday deal, which brings it well under $20. And unlike it, if you buy it on eBay, where it tends to be cheaper, you have to wait a month to get the pen. This way, you can get it pretty quickly. And I had great luck with this particular pen that I got. So I don't get any money from Amazon, so don't think that that's the reason why I'm doing this, but I like to share the joy. Today I'm looking, as I say, at the Jinhao 100, and it's one of a number of pens that are indebted to the design of the Parker Duofold Centennial. So that pen, I was lucky enough to be given one a few years ago. And it is actually, the one that I was given was made for Forbes magazine. And I guess you would get it if you were a super duper subscriber or a friend to some kind of a celebrity. I don't know. They gave them out to people. It's it's quite a beautiful pen. The Centennial was made to celebrate Parker's 100th anniversary and came out in the late 1980s, I think in 1988. This particular version of the pen has a 18K gold nib, really beautiful nib. And it uses a converter, and it's a pretty large pen. And you can see that the Jinhao 100 is very much, I would say, an imitation of the Parker Centennial pen. The 100, I don't think, refers to the 100th anniversary of Jinhao. I think it's just a way of signaling that it's similar to the Parker pen. The Jinhao pen is just slightly smaller. It is 5¼ inches when it is capped. Now, here I'm sort of giving away one of the punchlines, which is that, or it's what they call a spoiler alert. Even though this pen only costs under $20 or around $20, and this pen by Parker can cost you, if you buy a new Parker Centennial pen, it can cost you around $600. This pen actually doesn't write that great. Now, it could be that the person who owned it before did something to it, although it doesn't seem to be damaged. It's hard to know. I think it actually would benefit from being tuned, but that's the thing. There's a kind of, if you're new to fountain pens, you sort of assume, well, if you have an 18K nib, which is very expensive, that it's going to write better than an inexpensive steel nib, but that's not the case. It all depends on how the pen is designed. It depends on its how the point is designed, whether you like broad nibs or extra fine nibs, and then how the pen is tuned sometimes makes a big difference in how the pen writes. And the other thing that's just sometimes frustrating is the same pen made by the same manufacturer. You can get two pens that are supposed to be exactly the same, and they will write quite differently. I mean, that's kind of the wonders of fountain pens, but it also can be quite frustrating. Now, some people may think that it's really tacky that Jinhao is imitating Parker so closely.
Wow, we're identical.
Not yet, you're not.
Haven't got anything a bit more sporting, have you?
Yeah, I don't really fancy this colour.
I fancy this. You're not you, so shut it and strip. All right, all right. You need to change too, Potter.
Bill, look away. I'm hideous.
I knew Ginny was lying about that tattoo.
Harry, your eyesight really is awful.
And I've already discussed this issue. Doodlebud, who I really like his channel, just this week has a discussion of this whole question of cloning or emulating or imitating other pen manufacturers. I think it's a good thing as long as the company is honest about it. And in this case, Jinhao is very clear on their band. It says Jinhao. There's no mistaking it for the original. It is kind of celebrating it, you could argue, the original. The other thing to be said here is that Parker itself is, you could argue, is in a way cloning earlier pens, because this pen is itself an homage to Parker's history and the Parker Duofold, and it is the Parker Centennial Duofold, or Duofold Centennial, and this is the vintage pen. This is the junior version from 1930, or around that, probably around 1929, this particular model. Parker started making the Duofold in the early 20s and stopped, I believe, in the early 30s, and it was an enormously popular pen. But there were other pens too, by the way, that were similar to this pen that at the time were either imitations. This is one, an inexpensive pen at the time by Stratford. Schaefer, for example, had a flat top pen. Much later, if you look in the 60s, the Schaefer no-nonsense pen, is actually relates very well to this style of pen. So you can look at that in comparison, in fact, to what Jinhao is doing. This is the no-nonsense pen, which was $2. You could buy this pen in the 1960s. And I'm going to do a whole video about this pen, because a lot of people, they started their whole pen journey in the 60s with this no-nonsense pen. And you can see that actually Jinhao, in doing a ball clip, is truer in a way to the original Parker pen. And they, unlike some of the other companies that do imitations of the Parker Centennial, doesn't do an arrow clip. And I think that's is actually a good thing. It's quite a tight clip, by the way. Like the Parker pen, the Jinhao is a pen that posts. It's not, it posts fairly securely, but it becomes a very, very long pen when it posts. And that's true, by the way, of, let me turn this around. That's true, too, of the Parker Centennial, too. It becomes a very, very long pen when you post it. So I don't know if, it certainly is a long enough pen that you don't have to post it when it's writing. So there you go. It becomes 6.5 inches when it's posted, and it's very similar in size. So you can see that happens. The other thing that is different from the Centennial is the band, right? So in this way, the pen is similar to some of the versions of the Duofold. And, the whole point of bands is not just as decorative. They often function, they make the cap stronger, supposedly. And the other thing they do is they protect, in this case, it's protecting the edge of the cap, while in the Parker Centennial, the band doesn't actually do that. So in a way, that's an improvement of the design. You could argue. Certain things which I think are nicer on the Parker is the fact that it is the same material all the way through, or seemingly the same. It's the same black, right? And there's no doubt that the Parker pen is beautifully made and expensively. This is gold plate. The nib is expensive, but this is a really nicely made pen. I should mention the finial, like the Parker pen. In this case, the Parker pen has a Forbes insignia on it, or logo. Normally it would have the Parker logo. But anyway, I think this is very nice the way Jinhao has done that. And it has the black end cap here, which actually does screw off, but there's no particular reason to do that. In terms of size, I'm always comparing it to the Metropolitan, and you can see that it is a similar size. Now, weight is interesting. I just got a new, so in this case, I'm emulating Doodlebud. I was intrigued by his little scale, that he weighs the pen, and it is very inexpensive. So let's try it out for the first time. Here is to get the weight, and we see that it is 28 grams. So this is now it has a bit of ink in it. And this would be to compare it to the Parker pen, which I'm assuming is going to be heavier. It is somewhat heavier than the Jinhao pen. So there you go. You have it at 30 grams in terms of weight for people who like to know that. At some point, I'm going to do, I think, a video about all the different emulations of the Parker Duofold Centennial. So Jinhao is one of many. For example, there is the company Conklin, which has done their Durograph, which you can see. This is in a yellow version of it. Here is I think they call this the Turquoise Knights or something like that, and this is they're very, very close to each other and close. The Conklin pen, I think, is made in China. It tends to at least list for about twice as much or more than the Jinhao pen, and I'm not sure that it is value, but we'll talk about that. I think there's another thing to say, that I am very impressed by the nib on this pen, and that I had assumed, because earlier Jinhao pens that I've had pretty mediocre nibs. This is a number 6 nib, which means that it's very easy to change it out. And I had assumed that it would probably not write that great, and I would probably replace it with a Jovo nib. But guess what? It writes beautifully. In fact, I don't think it's that any better than or any worse than a sort of standard Jovo nib. I also noticed that when I flush the pen, and you should always flush the nib with water, it uses a converter, right? And then when you get the pen, the good thing to do is to fill it with water and clean it out. That blue ink came out, which suggests that it had been tested. And I don't think that was the case in the old days with Jinhao pens. Old days, meaning a few years ago. But I think they are doing that now, and I think there is really there's better quality. Now, the thing that when you buy fountain pens is that you never know if you're getting the latest version of the pen, or you may be getting it earlier stock, and I think that might be true if you're buying it from eBay, and it may also explain the difference sometimes in the prices. Doug on Inquiring Minds has actually gotten in the past a fake version of the Jinhao pen that was just terrible, that he got off of eBay. So there are actual clones of clones, I suppose, and I'm not quite sure how you can, be sure of what you're going to get. That's one of the advantages of buying from Amazon. It's very easy to return it. When you get the pen, it comes in a typical Amazon package, and then inside it's got this plastic, bubble wrap, and then it comes in this very simple metal box, which is nice. I think this is actually very nice. I didn't even get a cartridge with the pen, but it did come with a converter, standard international style converter. Right now it has a lot of ink in it. It works quite well, and I don't see any evidence of leaking. And in general, I think the pen and fit and everything seems very, very nice, right? It doesn't. The other thing is I really like the color, and that's another issue in terms of emulation, because in many ways this particular pen, in terms of its color, is very much like the Delta Dolce Vita, right? And that pen, the Delta Dolce Vita, is definitely emulating the earlier Duofold pen, but it has become a classic, and nobody tends to accuse Delta of ripping off Parker, even though their pen looked the way it did, unless there wasn't, I think, a Parker Duofold before. So, there's this whole history of different pen manufacturers being influenced by each other. And I think it's a wonderful thing to use a fountain pen in general, right? And if an inexpensive fountain pen can get people into this whole world of fountain pens, then that's a wonderful thing. Another way might be to think about it a little bit like a cover band, right? Nobody mistakes a cover band that plays the Beatles or the Rolling Stones for the real thing. And yet, on the other hand, hearing music live is a magical thing. And you can't always hear a band live, even if they're still playing in somewhere, or it costs a lot of money to do that. And then, of course, so many bands have broken up, or the players aren't even alive anymore. So playing a cover version is a wonderful, marvelous thing. And so maybe that's a way to think about these fountain pens, because it's all about writing and drawing and having the experience of doing that. And if making an inexpensive pen can bring people into that world, I think it's a great thing. So, there's a way to do this the right way, and there's a way to do it the wrong way. And finally, the proof is in the pudding. I had a professor who used to always say that. How does it write? Does it write well? And in this case, this pen writes really well and draws well. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to do a writing sample, and I'm going to draw a rose. It is one of the delights of this week is that we had one final rose in the garden, and it's a beautiful yellow rose that lasted and is still lasting in this kind of miraculous way and getting bigger, blooming and blooming and blooming. So it's kind of like the final hurrah of the fall. And I made a drawing with this pen and watercolored it. So that's how the video ends up. So thank you for watching, and I hope you and your family are having a wonderful holiday. So how does it write? This is Waterman Tender Purple. This is a Rhodia pad paper. And, it doesn't have much line variation. It's not supposed to, but it has a little bit of a bounce. And it is really quite smooth. Very, very pleasant. and just the right wetness. One thing I should say is that this comes in a medium nib. And it used to be that Chinese pens tend to be just coming fine and extra fine. And I like medium to broad. So if somebody from Jinhao is listening to me, I wish they would come out with broad nibs. You are beginning to see some Chinese pens come up with the possibility of doing a stub nib. And sometimes you can get them in a bent nib or a fude nib. But anyway, this is quite a broad medium. This is definitely like a Western broad. Excuse me, Western medium, not a typically Asian medium. So it's very nice, and I'm very pleased with the way it writes. Thick. Box jumps over the lazy dog. Writes fairly fast. Seems very reliable. So really, I like this. I like Waterman ink, I should say. And they're supposedly Waterman inks are the safest, or one of the safest inks to use in a fountain pen. Probably not as good as using, let's say, Serenity Blue or their, I think it's blue, but it's nice.